Tattoo artists of Reddit, what is the weirdest thing you've tattooed? A dude who was a regular customer at an old job got a scorpion on one forearm and a tarantula on the other. Only their heads were replaced by Beavis. Tattooist here. The list is long, but the one that made me laugh the most that I've done is Will E. Coyote's arm poking out of a dude's butt, holding a sign that said help. I used to work with a guy who had a tattoo on the side of his body that was a woman squatting over a pond, full fire hydrant, pissing into it. Inside the pond was floating decapitated heads. When I asked him, he told me that the woman was his ex and the heads were all his kids. I asked, why is she pissing on them? And he told me he has a piss fetish. Not a tattoo artist, but my friend got a text tattoo saying, only judge can God me. Like, well, that's your arm, bruh. My photo tattoo guy did a photo tattoo of a copy of an 1862 photo of Abraham Lincoln, adding a Mike Tyson eye tattoo to old Abe. It actually turned out pretty awesome. In prison, I knew a guy with half his name scribbled backwards on his forehead. The only explanation I could come up with was he was tattooing himself in the mirror, and halfway through, realized it was coming out backwards to everyone, so called it quits. Worked with a guy that was changing his shirt one time, and he had a big elephant head on his stomach, and the trunk disappeared below his belt line. He saw my notice, and without me saying anything, just nodded and said, "Yep." Not a tattoo artist, but my son has the entry stamp from his favorite nightclub tattooed on his forearm. It got him free entry for a full week before his friend stole the club's stamp. And they bought a new different stamp. A girl had a dream about marrying a dolphin. She got a tattoo of her as a mermaid, rising from the water in an embrace with the dolphin. Halfway through, after hitting on me the whole time and telling me stories about an abusive ex, she started arguing about the color scheme and left with only the outline and some shading. A zombie wearing a purple basketball jersey, hacking a guy's arm off and vomiting. The guy's also vomiting up at the zombie, and the streams of the two are meeting in the middle. I've also done a cartoon fish being choked by another fish's poo. The choking fish is trying to unravel the poo. At the top of this sleeve, there's a first holding an aquarium net, two crossed joints over a Jamaican flag, and the smoke forms the date of the first time he smoked weed on a cruise with his parents. Matching hers tattoos on this couple. He was a co-worker's of my wife's, and I told her that he'd come in with his girlfriend. She say, "You mean wife?" No, definitely a new relationship. His wife was at home with the kids. Aside from that, nothing terribly wild. I did a small portrait of Donald Glover in whiteface that's pretty ridiculous. Not an artist. While I was getting some ink done, this group of guys come in and chat up one of the artists. They're all pretty chummy, and the guy asks to see my ink. After he looks at the piece I'm getting done, his artist friend suggests he show me his new masterpiece that he did for the guy. This guy takes off his shirt and turns around, just grinning his ass off with pride. There before me was a full back piece, displaying 3 cloaked and hooded members of the KKK. It had burning crosses, what looked like people hanging from trees, and the 3 clan members. I had another artist down the road finish my work and avoided that parlor after that. Not a tattoo artist, but once in jail, I held 12D batteries in a rolled up newspaper to power a homemade tattoo machine. While a friend tried tattooing the word king, he made the first stroke on the K and decided it hurts too much and that it would make a nice cross instead. Not an artist, but while getting my first, I saw a guy getting a Pikachu blowing his brains out with a revolver stuck in his mouth tattooed on his thigh. He actually stopped halfway through and told the artist to add more gore. I'll tell you the most bad thing I refused to tattoo. A couple brought in a picture of their tiny stillborn baby and asked me to do a palm-sized portrait of it. It was purple and had a pained expression. They just stood there looking vacant and hopeful, while I composed myself and summoned the words to let them down easy. This job can be crazy sometimes. Not a tattoo artist, but I asked a similar question once when I was getting my own tattoo. He said the weirdest thing a client had asked for was bugs in her nether regions, made to look as if they were crawling out of her vagina. That's a mental image I'll unfortunately never forget. Not an artist myself, but while I was in Air Force Tech School, one of my fellow flight members got super blackout drunk one night and got a tattoo of the Liger from Napoleon Dynamite on his butt. How did I find out? He was whimpering and whining the next morning during PA, complaining about a wicked hangover as well as a burning sensation on his butt while he was doing sit-ups. After PT, he went to his dorm room and found out exactly what happened to him the night before. To his credit, I never heard him say he regretted it. Worked in a tattoo shop. On a particularly slow day, one of our artists tattooed fingers going in womanly places on a girl's shoulder. Don't think it was ever done, but someone else called up wanting Mickey Mouse in a spade, flipping off the viewer with a Louis Vuitton bandana around his mouth. Don't think it gets trashier than that. Fresh out of my apprenticeship and at a point where I couldn't really say no, and I was pressured by my boss to do anything that comes my way. I had this young couple come in with the girl wanting her boyfriend's name tattooed on her wrist. She seemed nervous as hell and he was mostly speaking for her. I tried communicating as best as I could with her and make sure she really wanted the tattoo, but she only ever said yes with her boyfriend, increasingly getting annoyed. While doing the tattoo, she was shaking constantly and the dude was making fun of her the whole time. She didn't even smile when it was done, and they only thanked me briefly before leaving. I felt horrible and hated myself for letting my boss pressure me into doing that tattoo that obviously didn't have any sort of positive connotation for the girl. So I put my foot down from that point and now refuse to do partner tattoos ever since. Still feel bad about it to this day though. Obligatory, not an artist. But I was in the shop getting tattooed when a girl came in and got all you can eat for under $1 on her waistline with a dollar bill under it plastered right there for any man or woman who was gonna go down on her. Hands down the greatest tattoo I've ever seen. Sure, she's doing real well these days. One of my friends was drunk and high in 9th grade and tattooed a kidney bean with a face on his thigh. Years later, we would still laugh when he showed us how it was. In fact, still on his leg. Another one of my friends in 7th grade told me he got bored on the bus and tattooed a big smiley face on his forearm. I prayed that he was just joking, but I believed him once he pulled the tattoo needle out of his jacket pocket and showed me. Indeed, it never went away. I always thought it was dumb to do something so permanent at such a young age, but he died in a motorcycle accident a few years later in high school. So, in retrospect, I guess I'm glad he did what he wanted to do. I started to tattoo my name on my ankle in 11th grade. But then halfway through, I started thinking that ankle tattoos were for girls, and my name was a very stupid thing to tattoo. So I scrubbed, cut it off a few days later. Apprentice here. People ask for all sorts of unusual things, but one of strangest things I had to do was Gary the snail from SpongeBob on some lady's snail trail, with the whole joke behind it being it's a snail on a snail trail. I did that one pretty early on in my apprenticeship, and honestly, I still think about that tattoo sometimes. Oh, and just last week I had a lady come in asking for a dick and balls on the bottom of one of her toes, just as a fun joke piece. We did it. Hair, veins, the lot. She was super stoked with it, and to be honest, I'm pretty sure that's been the highlight of my career so far. Not a tattoo artist. I work at a prison. I see lots of outrageous tattoos. There is a guy we call Joker. He has elements of a deck of cards all over his face. His attempt was to look like a Joker card. Lots of teardrops. One guy shaved his eyelashes and had the word convict tattooed over each eye as a replacement. His in-laws must be proud of him. I am reluctant to take any measures to suggest who they are, but in my honest opinion, I think most probably regret their decision. Not a tattoo artist, but I had a friend that joined the US Navy that got a huge penis tattooed on his butt, going into his hole that said USN on it. The tip was about ½ an inch from his booty hole, and the shaft had a lot of veins. He showed me by jamming his bare butt into my open passenger window of my car in a Target parking lot while he was home on leave. It's forever emblazoned in my memory. Not a tattoo artist, but a nurse who had to put a catheter into a prisoner's penis. He said, "I hope you have one long enough." I pulled down his pants, and he has a huge tattoo above his pubic area that said The Punisher. I started laughing because I didn't think the catheter would be long enough. It was easily 10 inches soft, probably in prison for manslaughter with that unit. 7 years ago when I was an apprentice. I was at the shop, and this girl comes in and asks for a lettering. 2 initials, actually. The tattoo gets passed to me. I print the design and proceed to put the stencil on. The initials were L and S, which stand for her boyfriend's name. She wanted the tattoo around the butt. I keep the printed picture above my station. I'm not a tattoo artist, but a big fat bald biker came into my bar once, and one of the girls told me to look at the back of his big bald melon. He had a big stack of pancakes, complete with a melting pad of butter and maple syrup dripping down them. I thought I'd ask him about it even though everyone in the bar was terrified of this guy. I said, "Hey, what's up with the pancake tattoo? Got a story behind it?" He said, "Yeah, my name's Pancake," and was not friendly about it. I have this Sikh guy come and get a satanic goat with 666 under the goat head. He's come back on 2 other occasions to get more satanic goat heads and Satan across his shoulders. I personally don't agree with the tattoos, but he tips well. I had a friend that went to get his own name, Andrew, tattooed on his left pectoral, in an old English type font because of his heritage or something. He'd never stepped foot on English soil a day of his life. Problem was, he spent too much on drinking that day and only had enough to get Drew on his chest, so he did. For years when he met women, they'd ask, and he'd have to explain why he had half his own name on his chest. I suggested it was for the days he was too dumb and couldn't remember his own name. So I was hooking up with a girl from Tinder, and off comes the top, and she had these weird hairy hands tattooed on her breasts like groping her. So I'm like, well, that's off. Putting but okay, to each their own. Anyway, I then noticed the arms went around to her back. I then noticed she had a full-sized monkey on her back, giving her the reach and grope. I asked her what was with the tattoo, and she said she got the hands first, but they were an ex-boyfriend's hands, so she made them hairy to cover it when they broke up. She then thought the monkey hands looked weird on their own, so she got the monkey. That is probably the weirdest tattoo I have ever seen. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe.